All right. So, variations in happiness. So, I want you to think about on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being completely unhappy. I can't even imagine how unhappy I would be. To 10, oh my gosh, the joy, the delusion, the happiness, the crazy elation I'd be feeling all the time. So, on a scale from 1 to 10, how happy would you be a year from now if today you won a $10 million lottery? So today you won $10 million. So I hope you're aware that means you get $5 million only. It project out. You just won that money today in a year. How happy will you be? All right, now let's flip it. How happy a year from today would you be if you suffered a crippling car accident that left you a paraplegic? Knock on wood that this does not happen to any of us. Um, but imagine that that happened. What would your happiness rating be a year from today if that had happened to you? All right, hopefully you played along. I have a video that is the actual researcher who first posed that question to participants, and he's going to talk in that video about what he found. And just spoiler alert, you might have given yourself a higher happiness rating for the how happy you'd be next year if you had just won the lottery than you gave for yourself if you had suffered a crippling accident, right? You probably thought I probably would be more happy having won the lottery than I will be in a year having become a paraplegic. But what actually happens with actual lottery winners and actual paraplegics is their happiness is no different. That these things are actually not the kind of outcomes that are really going to change your level of happiness, believe it or not. So I'll let the expert tell you why and more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and push on. Here's another question for you. Above what temperature would you consider the weather uncomfortably hot? How hot would it have to be in order for you to say, this is too hot? I can't even. Okay, so hopefully you're writing a number down. Let's flip it. Below what temperature would you consider the weather to be uncomfortably cold? So, how cold would it have to get for you to say, I'm not going out in that? That's too cold. I'm not doing it. All right, hopefully you have two numbers. Now, the last question on this temperature issue is where were you raised or where have you spent most of your life? So I'm just going to, clearly, we can't share this information in the class, so I'm going to share mine. Um, so I'll just talk recently, right? So in my adult life, I was like 27 years old when we moved to Western Washington, and I lived there for 25 years, something like that. And I adapted to the weather. I really seriously adapted to the weather really hard. Like I am this, I loved when it rained. I was into it. That was good weather for my husband. Hated it. He hated all the rain. He did not like how soggy the ground. He was not a happy weather guy. I loved it personally. So we had a little discrepancy on weather apparently, but I adapted to it. And so I got used to, if you're from Western Washington, you'll recognize what I'm going to say. If it got to like 75, it was starting to get too hot. I mean, I just recently, it's summertime right now while I'm recording this, and I just recently got a notification from the west side that was saying that there was a excessive heat warning, and it said it's going to be above 85 degrees. Um, to me, that was very hot. And part of it, in my defense, is that it's a little more humid on the west side of the state. Um, I have lived the past 7 years um, on the east side of the state where it's a lot drier, and I've adapted now to where for me, it needs to be above probably 92 or 93 for me to say, oh my gosh, it's intolerably hot. I'm going in to my air conditioning because my house has air conditioning on the east side. We didn't have that on the west side. But 92, 93, that's too hot. Like, I don't want to be outside in that. And part of it has to do with it's drier over here, and so it doesn't sap you as much. And for me, on the west side, I would go outside without a jacket as cold as like maybe 45. But on the east side, I go out without a jacket down to like sometimes I've been out there in 14 degrees if I'm going to be out briefly because if it's not windy, 14 degrees on the east side feels like 45 degrees on the west side. It honestly is not that bad. If it's windy, forget it. It's really cold, but that's a different issue. But anyway, I had adapted to the west side so much that moving over here, it took me a little while to recalibrate. So I wouldn't go outside if it got over 80 degrees. And I didn't find out for a couple of years that actually the 80 degrees over here isn't bad. It's fine. And I would see people out riding their bikes in 85-degree weather. I'm like, it's too hot for this. What are you doing? And I'm in my air-conditioned car. It's not that hot. So you adapt, you get used to things, and that's a big principle in happiness is that you adapt, right? You get used to whatever your status quo is, and so it's going to take more to get you to that same level of happiness or the same level of hot or the same level of cold. We're talking about adaptation level phenomena. That's the name of this phenomenon that we see. The people adapt. The level becomes their new baseline. So now that you've won $10 million dollars in the lottery, the first thing that starts to take you down from your new level of happiness is your recognition that you're really only getting five. You're like, what? How am I only getting five? Little chinks start to happen, and then next thing you know, you're like, okay, so maybe I was a little bit I was very happy when I won it, and then I slowly regress to less happy. And in fact, whatever level of happiness I have now is my new baseline, and I need something beyond it, and then I'm going to need something beyond that, and then I'm going to need something beyond that because I adapt to whatever the new level is. So our tendency to adapt to a given level of stimulation, whether it's heat or it's lottery money or it's an injury or it's our new job or whatever it is, we adapt to that. And what we start to notice is only times that we change off of that new level. So that new level becomes sort of the ho hum. This is how it always should be, or it always is, and we need more to feel happy and less to feel than that to feel sad, and it's always moving. So when we have an upward change in our life circumstances, we may experience an increase in happiness initially. But then we reach adaptation and we're like, okay, well, so now that you might think to yourself, okay, let's get concrete. Let's say that you currently are earning minimum wage. So if you live in the state of Washington, that's currently at the moment I'm speaking 1674, I think. So let's say you're earning 1674 and you think to yourself, if I were to get a raise to like could we please deal in round numbers, $19 an hour. If I got a raise to $19 an hour, I would be really happy with that. That would actually resolve a lot of things. I've run my numbers, and if I made $19 an hour, I would have that moment of breath that my teacher was talking about. $19 an hour would do it for me. So initially, let's say you went to your boss and you made your case, and your boss goes, you know what, we do value you as an employee. I'm giving you that raise. So now you're making $19 an hour. You experience an increase in happiness. I would like to point out part of it is because you went and talked to your boss and showed some, control over your own destiny. That's going to contribute to happiness probably even more than the boost in your income. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So you have that increase in happiness, but then you're going to get used to it and you're going to say, okay, I could breathe. And in fact, I could probably replace this old clunker car that keeps breaking down. I could like maybe buy something new and get into a small car payment. I could probably afford that. And now money's tight again because now you have a payment, right? So you're going to adapt. You're going to get used to it. And so now you're going to be like, man, maybe if I was earning $20 an hour, maybe that would make me happy. That's the chase that we're always in with this adaptation level phenomenon, is that we're always needing a little bit more to get us back to where we were. And so that's the challenge. That's probably why income does not always predict happiness. Also, just have to throw it in because of the way the economy is these days. Getting an increase in salary is often consumed by the increases in price, right? So you got the boost to $19, and oh, oh my gosh, then you find out, wait a minute, we all got boosted to $19 because that's what they were going to do anyway. Because guess what? That's the cost of living increase, and now eggs are whatever eggs are, and right, and you've lost your entire boost, and so that's part of the problem with income predicting happiness, is that income is it's always fluctuating relative to the cost, right? So it's frustrating. All right, so let's imagine that you're taking a class and you were given the following information about the distribution of final grades in the class. So you just completed it and you found out that the instructor has awarded the following grades. So 40 students got an A, 50 students got a B, and 10 students got a C. Nobody got a D and nobody got an F. How satisfied would you be using this Likert type scale that's now based on percent? How, like, to what degree of happiness would you be? How satisfied would you be if you got an A in this context? How satisfying would that A be, knowing that this is the grade distribution? How about if you got a B plus or a B or a C plus? Okay, let's pretend like we are in another class. And everybody keeps doing the same thing apparently. Here's the distribution from another class that you just completed. So now we see this distribution: 10 A's, 30 B's, 40 C's, 15 D's, and 5 F's. How satisfied would you be with that A now in this context? About that B plus? Keep going. Now how satisfying is that C or C plus? This is what we call, whoop, relative deprivation. We compare ourselves to other people. So in this first distribution, if you got a C, you're probably not going to be very satisfied with that, are you? Because you're going to be like, I'm one of 10 people who got this grade, and this grade is the lowest grade given in the class. I'm not feeling very good about this. In this distribution, that same C might feel better. I'm one of 40 people who got this grade. 20 more people got grades lower than this. It's not, you probably are not in love with it, but it's not as bad, right? This is what we call relative deprivation. We look at what other people have and we determine our happiness based on how we are faring compared to what other people have. I found these smileys. I was hoping that that back smiley looked jealous. It's not really supposed to be mad, but it's jealous. Okay, so pretend like that's jealous. So comparison with others is a lot of times the basis for us to determine whether we're doing well or not. It's not just objectively how am I doing, but how am I doing compared to others. I know when I tell students who are going to take the GRE, the graduate record exam is a test that you take to get into graduate school to show what you have acquired during your bachelor's level training, right? And I always tell students, do not look at your raw score. No one gets somebody probably does, but I mean, no normal people get 100% on the GRE, the SAT, the ACT. Like nobody gets 100%. That's not the goal. The goal is to do well compared to the other people who have taken the test. So we actually want you to be comparing yourself to other people in that circumstance. Just look at your percentile ranking and how that reports to you what percentage of people did you score better than. So if you have a percentile ranking of 10, that's not very good. You only scored better than 10% of the people. If you have a percentile score of 90, that means that you score better than 90% of the test takers. So you look at those percentile rankings, and that gives you the ability to compare and know how you did relative to your competitors, right? The other people who might be applying, right? The better that we're doing relative to others, the more satisfied we'll be. So it's more satisfying to get a C in a class where a lot of people got C's and some even got D's and F's. It's very unsatisfying to get a C when it's the lowest grade and not very many people got it. As grades have been inflated over time, and it's been getting worse and worse over my career. I mean, it started off, we were already kind of worried about it, and now here we are, decades later, and it's like, yeah, it's getting pretty bad. Students are less and less satisfied with their grades. If you're not getting an A, you feel like you absolutely are failing. And, honestly, C is where you're supposed to be. C means average. You're doing what you're supposed to do, but nobody wants a C. Nobody wants a C. So we've become less satisfied with grades because they've sort of lost their meaningfulness. They no longer like discriminating between people who really know the material versus people who kind of don't, stuff like that. And so it becomes less satisfying. I'm going to go ahead and stop here because we're starting to finally move into actually getting to define what happiness might be. So let's go ahead and do that in the next video.